I understand the shame of not being able to keep up and feeling yucky, but then there's a person who's only 65 years old in the house who's taking care of Jean alone, alone. And I don't think she really planned for the possibility that she would die first.
Did you plan for this, or did you miss when life demands answers you can't dismiss? Will you be ready when the trumpet blows? Do you have the blueprint for life's unknowns?
Hi,
Good morning.
how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm living large.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I understand that you have something to show me today.
Yes. I wanted to show you, got released some photos of the inside of the Jean Hackman. And I apologize, the wife, don't have her name off the top of my head.
Betsy. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So what I'm looking at, everybody, are photos of the inside of the Hackman Arakawa house and the clutter, just the amount of stuff. And I'm thinking about a person with full-on dementia walking around in a house with so much clutter and so much chaos. I mean, I don't even see a footpath in a couple of these rooms.
And there's, talk about rat and rodents.
Oh, and I know they had dogs.
They had dogs, a lot of open medication capsules. And yes.
Wow. So, okay. So let's repaint the story a little bit about what we know about Mr. Hackman, Gene Hackman, great movie star, world-renowned celebrity. Everybody knows who Gene Hackman is, right? And his wife is 30 years younger.
And renowned in her own right.
An artist, right? And so Betsy and Gene had been married for a long, long time, more than 30 years at this juncture. And it's my understanding that Gene had dementia. There were no caregivers in the home. There might have been housekeepers maybe, but looking at the pictures that I just saw, I don't know that they let anyone into the house.
Probably.
I understand the shame of not being able to keep up and feeling yucky, but then there's a person who's only 65 years old in the house who's taking care of Jean alone. And I don't think she really planned for the possibility that she would die first. And we've learned now that she did. She died a week before he did.
Right.
Which means he was alone in that cluttered, full house of stuff and things and rotting food and oh my gosh.
But backing up, what is going on in her mind at 66 to allow the home? I mean, obviously that didn't happen in a week between her death and his death. So what is going on 1 year, 2 years, 5 years prior to this incident?
There comes a point, I think, before that level of clutter happens where some clutter is okay and you'll deal with it later. You brought something new into the house and you're overwhelmed that day, or he needs a lot of attention that day or something. And so it gets set aside. And then the closet is full. You can't hide anything more in the closet. And then you figure, okay, that family room or whatever, I'll just put it all in there. And then it just builds and builds and becomes eventually where maybe all you have are goat paths through your house to get to the bathroom.
I've seen incidences where in situations, not exactly, obviously every situation is a little different, but the caregiver, the wife, became a QVC addict.
Oh, yes. The shopping online. Well, there's plenty of Amazon addicts, I'm sure. There's plenty of people who buy a lot of stuff or they get excited because they feel like they're part of the community, right? As they're buying things. I've seen that phenomenon. Not only do they spend a lot of money unnecessarily, but then where do they go that they're going to wear that ring or wear that dress or wear that? I mean, what's going to happen, right? So there comes a point where I think some people can't plan ahead. That whatever that is, it's an impulse. It's an impulse that happens in the day and they buy the thing and it comes And maybe they unpack the box, or maybe it stays in its box. I saw a lot of unopened boxes in those pictures.
Well, let's say she's the caregiver. Obviously caring for somebody with dementia is, nobody should have to live on both sides of it. It's cruel on both sides of the aisle for somebody being a caregiver for someone with dementia, and then obviously the person inflicted with dementia, Alzheimer's. So she's frustrated. This is her way. She can't get out of the house. She can't leave him alone. She gets on Amazon, obviously not picking on Amazon, but she gets on the internet and buys things, however that case may be. They come to the house. She's now embarrassed by all the things she's accumulated in this house and is not letting any third party in. So the question is, we are planned for this. How do we advise people that say their mother and father are not inviting them into their house? How do we plan for that?
It's a real tough one. You may be the only person who could knock on the door and get a peek inside, and your physical personal presence would be required to at least ask someone, what would you like to do about this situation? So I had a client who had goat paths. When I mean goat paths, I mean that things are stacked up so high and so on that you can just like sidestep to get from one part of the house to another. And this gentleman slept on his couch, and only his couch. His bathrooms were both befouled and really dirty. And it took me 3 months of conversation with him by phone saying, I have to see you in person at least once. Your safety is now my job. You made me your trustee. You asked me to serve. I agreed. And now that I'm serving, I actually have to physically look at the house. I have to see if it needs any repairs. I have to see if you're safe. Oh, I'm safe. I'm safe. I hear you say that, but please let me come over briefly. He said he would be willing to meet me at a coffee shop near his home. Okay.
Red flag.
Well, okay. I have to start somewhere. And I decided to bring a care manager with me who has a very soft, sweet, feminine approach in her way. I'm kind of big and bad. So we go together for this lunch meeting, and he decided that he would be okay if we only looked in through the front door. And that was really nice of him to let us do that. And we really appreciated it. So we followed him up the road. He drove, not very well. And we pulled in behind him in his parking area. And we went to the front door, and he said, oh, that's right. I can't open the front door from inside. Remember, the front door opens in. You can look from the kitchen door. Okay. So we go with him through the garage like this to get through, right? And we get to the kitchen door, and he goes first, and he unlocks it and he opens it. And then I saw him actually feel that moment of looking at his house, knowing there were two people behind him looking at the same thing he was looking at. His shoulders came up. He took a deep breath, and then his shoulders came all the way down. And he said, I guess you can come in, which was a big moment for him. We said nothing. We came in behind him and looked around. And Ron, I don't think I could live this way, but I could see how it could accumulate. I could see how it happened. Again, there's this pile of mail at the front door that's coming through the mail slot of the front door. And the pile comes all the way to the mail slot. There's stacks of paperbacks. There's newspapers. The newspapers alone filled most of the dining room. The kitchen, there wasn't any counter space. And I think he had maybe a cereal bowl that he was comfortable eating out of. And we got into the living room space, and he's standing there, and he said the words, I'm so embarrassed. And I happen to know that he was on medication that he wasn't entirely compliant with. And I said, it's going to be okay, Dave. We can fix this. It's going to be okay. And he's like, how? And I said, if you're willing, we'll just do a little at a time. Independent Trustee Alliance is a proud nonprofit sponsor of Plan for This. If you are considering serving as a trustee, please visit trusteealliance.com to learn more about this complex and sometimes overwhelming job. trusteealliance.com. Plan for This thanks the Estate Sale Warehouse for all their amazing service and support. Entire home cleanouts, inventory, appraisal, auctions, sale of fine art and classic cars. Learn more at estatesalewarehouse.com.
I'm curious in this case, I mean, because most people in that situation are not going to voluntarily resign from being the trustee of their trust. So was this something the court initiated? Or, I mean, if
No, he had extraordinary relationships with his CPA and his attorney, and had known them for a long, long time. He was an engineer. He had been married, but his wife died many, many years ago, and they only got to be married for a few years. So he didn't have any children. He never remarried. He told me that he never even dated again. She was like the perfect person, and he just couldn't bring himself to be with anyone else. And he's living alone. He has his own company. He's the only person that he's talking to. And yet, he would go get his taxes done with his CPA.
Right.
And so he developed a relationship with that person who loved him. His CPA loved him. And he would ask questions about him. And they would say, well, Dave, you're alone. You should probably have an estate plan. You should probably get this together. So he introduced him to an estate planning attorney who was a golf buddy. And so the CPA and estate planning attorney both talk with this man. And this man, knowing his own mental illness, knowing his own self, said, okay, I'll get an estate plan. And in 6 months from now, from the time I sign the document, it's going to be irrevocable in 6 months. And I'd like a chance to get to know my trustee, and then I shouldn't have the power to change it anymore.
Oh.
Which was very insightful.
That's
and very unusual.
Rare.
It's very unusual. I've never seen this in another document.
Or it's very rare that somebody would actually have the foresight to do something like that.
Well, he had at least 2 men in his life that he was willing
he trusted.
Yeah. And he was willing to receive their counsel. He believed them in their role, right? Their official professional role. He believed they were a good CPA and a good attorney. He believed that, and it was very helpful.
Not everybody has that kind of relationships with other people, and a lot of people are alone. And this is again, if you're in a community and you suspect something is going on, it's amazing how many homes I've walked into over the last 15 to 20 years, and they could be literally condominiums with adjoining walls, and this is going on within those walls. It is heartbreaking because you don't know what really prompted all this and how do you plan for this. So going back to the Gene Hackman story, there is family, Gene Hackman's daughter, who did make a public statement. And again, there's 3 sides to every story. She said she hasn't visited Gene at his home. So again, is there some responsibility there, whether you're welcome or not? Get in the plane, get in the car, and go visit mom or dad and dad.
I can see where it'd be really touchy. He's remarried. He's not married to your mother. He is an independent, tough guy. The whole world knows what a tough guy Gene Hackman is, right? I can only imagine his persona, the power of that personality in person. And if dad says that's how he wants it, who's going to argue with him? So I could go see him. I could choose to go visit him and look in on him. But then what happens? Who do I call? I mean, if I'm the daughter and I actually physically go see my dad and I see the house like this, Dad, are you okay? Sure, everything's fine. Betsy, what's going on? It looks like you guys have just piled it all up in here. Can I help somehow? Oh, no. It's the maid's fault. Somebody's supposed to come do this 5 years ago and they haven't shown up, whatever their story is. you're still left with this, how do I proceed? You could call Adult Protective Services.
And I've had very mixed reactions with that.
That's a problem in itself.
Because when you call APS, Adult Protective Services, it sets up a whole nother chain of events.
Potentially. I mean, sometimes just having that person with credentials and so on show up at your door to say, I'm just here to see how you're doing. Someone expressed a concern about you, and I wonder how you are. And would you like any resources? We have help with hoarding. We have help. There could be psychological help that you need. There may be other things. Do you really want it this way? And so just being asked the question can be a life-changing event.
Getting back to the daughter, depending on the relationship, again, and I don't know, obviously, the whole background.
Sure.
I'm just making assumptions of what I've seen. Could the daughter have just said, you know what, I'm going to get an Airbnb next door and be over here every day and start cleaning things. Again, he's got dementia. He doesn't really know, but
I think it's really on Betsy. In this particular
but obviously
case.
Betsy's not well because, again, this doesn't happen overnight.
And that's the thing too.
The mystery
we each have our own idea about what wealth means. Wealth might mean you can buy whatever you want whenever you want to. Wonderful, right? That's great. You have the money. It's your money. You can spend it however you want to. But eventually, every house becomes small. I think George Carlin said great things about that, right? We have a bunch of stuff. We buy a house so we have all our stuff, and then we buy a bigger house so we can have more stuff. There's something in there, really, about the way that we express our freedom and express our wealth and express whatever our creativity is. And then there comes a point where the stuff just takes up so much space that there's no space for you to be. And if you feel like you're on the edge of that, if you feel like somehow maybe you're a hoarder, that's possible. Maybe you're not. Maybe you just have a lot of stuff and you haven't organized it. Please, please ask for help. Please ask somebody for help. I've had to do it. I was a very busy single mom, and my bedroom had become the dumping ground for everything. It's true. It's true. I don't think of myself as a hoarder, but I realized I got to a place where I felt overwhelmed. I felt like in the short amount of time I had between work and putting the kids to bed and going to bed myself and waking up in the morning and doing that all again, and the weekend time was my precious time with my children, that one project was overwhelming. For some people, it's the garage. Your garage is an overwhelming mess. You know that the family photographs that you'd love to give your kids is somewhere, but that's in the last box in the bottom corner underneath all this stuff. Every one of us has to deal with that sometime. And if you can find the courage in yourself to ask for help, the freedom that you experience after you let go of stuff, after you decide, is this really serving my life? And whether you use the Marie Kondo method or you use a therapist or psychologist to help you get through and the barriers and so on, please don't live like that. Please ask for help.
And there are, just like aging life specialists, there are professional organizations, national organizations, organizing organizations. I ask that you don't, if this is something that appeals to you, that you really want to get done and you see the need, don't ask your family to be the one to decide what stays, what goes, what gets donated. Get an independent third person who doesn't have the emotions attached to it. It makes it a lot easier to say, I'm giving this away, I'm donating it to, or maybe see if your children do want any of this stuff.
Well, before I have the children look at any of my stuff, I don't want them to see my mess.
Right.
So
organize it first.
So are you talking about like senior move specialists?
Yes.
There's also personal organizers.
Right. Yes.
There are some really great personal organizers that I know, and we should really add those to the sources list so we have some more information about how to find those kinds of resources. I really am encouraging everyone to take a moment and examine their life. And what you're looking at is, how am I living? What does my day-to-day look like? If I walked in through my own front door, and by the way, I recommend that to business owners and to us as individuals, walk in through your own front door. If you're used to parking your car in the garage and then coming into the house that way, I understand it. But come in through your front door. What do you see? What do you see on the lawn? What do you
Can you
see?
open the front door?
Sure. Once you do that and you take a look inside, you'll see it with new eyes, and then you can make some better choices.
I think that's a very, I see this, and it doesn't, this is an affliction in very wealthy communities, middle class communities, lower income communities. This is an ongoing problem. And as the population, the baby boomers are turning 80, many are living alone. If you are that kind of neighbor that can do a pop by, I encourage you to do that and have that discussion. Find an organizer in your community and maybe introduce that organizer as a friend of yours. Little white lies are okay, I think, in these situations. How do you feel about that?
I just really want each of us to live the lives that we want to live. And sometimes we confine ourselves by our habits. And if your habit is really become such that it might be a concern, it's up to you. And if somebody introduces you to a new friend, okay, I would be wary. I'd be on my edge. I'm not sure, but a neighbor who I already am familiar with, and I probably haven't invited them to my house. It's an interesting thing that when I was a kid, my parents used to have people over for dinner all the time, right? There were always people coming and going out of our house. So I thought as an adult, I would do the same thing. I would have dinner parties at my house. And dinner parties are a lot of work. And I found that they weren't being reciprocated. I would invite people over, I'd cook for them and so on, and then I wouldn't necessarily get invited to their house. But then as I got into this work as a private trustee and visiting so many homes, I realized some people felt like they couldn't invite anyone into their home. So this actually plays into the definition of home.
Mm.
My definition of home is that I have at least one area in my house 24/7. If somebody came in through the door, I'd be okay with them seeing that space. Maybe not my office. I have to prepare for company in my own home office. Okay. But in my living room area, I have a space where if somebody needed me, I could bring them right in, sit them down on a couch, face them, and we could have a conversation. To me, that's one of my definitions of home. How about you? Do you have a definition of home?
Boy, my definition of home is I get this relaxed feeling of
Your haven.
my haven. You know how much I love my better half and my dog. And I get such peace when I walk in that front door. It's just a very overwhelming, positive feeling for me that I can just relax and set things aside and open up and tell how was my day. God love her. She still wants to know how was my day after all of these years and all of the crazy that we deal with every day. It's a very heartwarming feeling. So in terms of, it's just really around the kitchen table, just chatting.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that makes sense.
So I think that that's a beautiful thing for our audience to consider is that what is your definition of home? And if your home isn't what you'd like it to be, you have the power. You have the power to ask for help. You have the power to hire someone to help you. I know that it can be embarrassing at first, but it's kind of like ripping off the Band-Aid. You just do it. And then things really open up for you because once that living room gets cleared, once that kitchen is clean, wow, life really takes on a beauty, a comfort to it.
It just the blood pressure, the whole thing. It's just a whole different mentality when things are clear in your mind as to where you can walk.
Yeah. And as we get older and our bodies change and our ability to right ourselves after, possibly almost having a fall, right? Those kinds of, you need space. You need space. And I'm very, very grateful to have a life partner who is tidy and thinks about those things. But all of us could improve a little bit. And all of us are way too hard on ourselves. We need to be gentle with ourselves, the self-talk, the things we say to ourselves inside. Let's do something about this problem. Let's do something that will make it better. Let's live our lives on purpose and with planning.
Thank you, Marguerite. So before we sign off, is there somebody you want to ask if they've got their plan ready?
Oh, that's a good one. Steven Spielberg, since I've been thinking about movies and so on. Steven Spielberg, will you be ready when life asks, did you plan for this?
Money management and legacy. Will you be ready for life's decree?